Did we learn anything from BYU's spring evaluation period when it comes to recruiting? Well, something was pointed out by Cougs Daily over at Sports Illustrated. I think that's worth noting about BYU, and it bodes well for the future of BYU when it comes to the Big 12. We'll talk about that. We'll also get to the schedule for BYU women's soccer. We know where they will be playing this coming summer/fall. We got all that and more ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. I work for the Zone Sports Network in Salt Lake City, Utah, as the executive producer of DJ and PK in the morning. But more importantly, thank you for making us your first listen of the day here on Locked On Cougars. It is an absolute privilege to be with you guys talking BYU sports. And after the Monday that I have had, I can tell you this much, it really is a privilege. It kind of lets me get away from all the other stuff going on. I had some issues with our radio stuff. We moved into a new studio there in Salt Lake City. So it's good to be stepping away from that and just be able to sit down, podcast, and kind of pontificate on what's going on with the BYU Cougars. So thank you once again for making us your first listen of the day. We are very proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where, of course, the motto is your team every day. And as such, this is your only daily podcast focused on all things BYU. And in essence, the goal here is to make you the smartest BYU fan in the room. So thank you for checking us out if you're just checking us out for the first time. If you have not done so already, I'm going to point here. I think I got it right. Yeah, here we go. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that button right down there in the lower right corner of your window. Subscribe to the show, follow the show. Make sure you enable notifications, like, comment if on the traditional podcast platforms out there, Apple Podcasts, etc. Leave your ratings and reviews. Always appreciate your guys' support, and make sure that you guys continue to join us every single day throughout the summer. All right, let's talk about something that was pointed out by our good friend Casey Lundquist over at Cougs Daily. It's part of the Sports Illustrated College fan site network, and he noted an interesting thing I feel like we need to talk about when it comes to BYU football in terms of their recruiting moving forward here for the Cougars. As he points out, and what this is called is the spring evaluation period. So BYU coaches have kind of fanned out across the country. They are back in Provo now. Of course, official visits happening this past weekend. It is now officially where coaches can no longer go out for the time being and recruit. They're back on home turf. But during this spring evaluation period where they kind of fanned out all over the country, there were a grand total, as Casey noted, of 19 offers given to prospects from around the country in this evaluation period. Of the 19 here, 17 held competing Power 5 offers, and all 19 held competing FBS school offers. Since joining the Big 12, it's not official, though, he says that BYU has been not afraid to swing for the fences and go head-to-head with Power 5 schools for out-of-state prospects and no prior connections to BYU. He says, historically speaking, BYU has struggled to land prospects that fit that definition. He also notes that this is a notable shift in strategy, and this is where I want to talk more about this. During Kalani Sitake's tenure at BYU, 57% of their signees did not have a competing offer from a Power 5 school when they signed. BYU has signed a lot of players with athletic potential and size that were not heralded recruits, counting on their ability to develop those players into Power 5 level players after they arrived on campus. So, if you go by the math, 17 of 19 is not 57%. That is verging on what? 90 some odd percent of these players that BYU offered during the spring evaluation period have at least one Power 5 offer, and all of them have competing offers from other schools. They may not be Power 5. The other two do not have a Power 5 offer, but that could change. I think BYU is actually realizing, hey, we've got some cachet right now. We're 21-4 over the past 2 years. You cannot argue with the fact that BYU has been more successful on the football field in the last 2 years than they have been in more than a decade? It's been a long time since BYU has talked about this highly on the national front. And that's a very, very good thing, because BYU, as they join the Big 12 now, is going to have more of a national following because they're going to be playing all over the country. We've talked about this before. The Big 12 is going to be the only Power 5 conference that spans 3 time zones. The Eastern, Central, and Mountain time zones all are now going to feature Big 12 schools. BYU is starting to recruit more and more into Texas, more and more into Florida. They're going to the South. Emmanuel Lalo Waller is a guy from Alabama. I know that he has connections through the church to BYU, speaking of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, etc. But you're seeing BYU spread their wings in terms of their overall recruiting strategy, and that should be a welcome thing if you're a BYU fan. BYU understands they have got a lot going for them right now. You can't argue with success. You go out there and have back-to-back top 25 caliber seasons. You win 21 games. You've won 10-plus games the past 2 years, and now you have officially that Power 5 label attached to your name. There's a lot riding for BYU right now that they can use to their advantage on the recruiting front, and they're taking advantage of it. In this article, and I'm going to link this in the show notes if you want to read more up on this, he mentions here that also BYU has gone about prioritizing a little more recruiting players from out of state. Says that BYU's approximately offered 30 players during the evaluation period. Of the 30, none of them lived in the state of Utah. So the number suggests that BYU staff feels like they need to get more out of state in terms of bringing players in as they get ready to compete in the Big 12. And then also the Power 5 impact, as you know, it's here for the first time in program history, BYU has that Power 5 logo / cachet next to their name officially. And he says that while it's early in the recruiting class, BYU had more success competing against Power 5 schools. Says that 9 4-star recruits have included BYU among their finalists. Of course, 3 of them were on campus this past weekend in Hunter Clegg, Jackson Bowers, as well as Walker Lyons. You hit 2 out of 3 of those guys. You even get 1 of the 3. That's actually a very nice haul for BYU. We can remember not many years ago, in the not too distant past, where it seemed like maybe getting 1 4-star prospect in a BYU recruiting class maybe just would have made the world of difference for this program. That's no longer the case. They anticipate getting multiple Power 5 type players and multiple 4. And I would expect at some point, if they continue to win at the level they've been winning at, to expect to get 5-star talents to Provo. Obviously, that is going to depend on BYU continuing to allow Kalani Sitake and his coaching staff to go out and do what they are doing, giving them the proper resources to do that, and also keeping that coaching staff intact. I know the BYU put together an unprecedented, is what the term they used, deal for Kalani Sitake and his assistants to stay put in Provo, but for how long? How long will another program out there decide, you know what is BYU giving them? And they start looking at it and they're like, you know what? We can up the ante a little bit. How much more willing is BYU going to be to continue to compete in terms of the overall salary that they may have to pay to keep a guy like Kalani Sitake put in Provo? I am of the opinion that Kalani will stay at BYU for a quote-unquote hometown discount. I think he will take less from BYU because it's the school that he dreamed of going to, dreamed of coaching at. He's just a fan of the program. I think he will take less to remain at BYU than other programs might realize. But at the same time, there will come a point, and it maybe has already come at different times during his time at BYU. I know the past 2 cycles of head coaching vacancies, there has been renewed interest in Kalani Sitake and his staff. He is stuck with BYU through it so far, and hopefully he's with BYU forever. I don't want to see Kalani Sitake leave. Let me be very honest about that. I don't want to see him ever leave Provo. I want him to be the quote-unquote Polynesian Lavelle Edwards. That is what he has kind of tried to emulate, is his mentor, the guy that he played for at BYU. He wants to be that type of a legend in Provo. If given adequate resources and he feels like he is comfortable and he's set up for success in Provo, I don't think Kalani sees any reason to leave, but you've got to continue to capitalize on this. And that goes right back to here with recruiting, is the BYU needs to get out and absolutely chase every possible option they have on the recruiting front. Yes, they probably prioritize some out-of-state guys and recruiting in new Big 12 territory versus maybe their old way of looking inwards to the state. Yeah, they may do that a little bit. I do know that BYU will continue to look at their in-state prospects and prioritize those guys. They know the talent that is in this state of Utah. They know it's been the backbone for many, many of the great BYU football programs of yesteryear. They will never go away from that. They're not going to all of a sudden just say, you know what, Utah, you guys here in the state, you're not good enough for us. No, they're not going to do that. BYU realizes that Utah is becoming more and more of a fertile recruiting ground. Maybe it doesn't have the overall numbers that a Texas, a California, Florida might have in terms of just the sheer number of prospects, but the quality of prospects coming out of Utah, BYU knows what they have here. So they will obviously make the backbone of their program Utah boys, but The nice part is they can go out around the country now and say, hey, we're a Power 5 program. We're based here in Utah, at the foot of the Wasatch Mountains. We have won 21 games over the past 2 years. Do you have interest in coming here? And I think there are going to be a number of young men and families of those young men who are going to sit a little more straight up in their seat and say, tell us a little bit more about what you got going on at BYU. I also think that the honor code is something you absolutely recruit to. There are a lot of parents out there, and as a guy who's got young children, I can tell you this much. I'm already thinking of what their future is going to be. There are advantages to pitching what BYU. It's clean living. That's what it is. And I think there's a lot of parents out there, maybe the son or daughter, no matter, maybe they don't necessarily have as much interest, but mom and dad sure do. And that can be just a little bit more of a hook to get some of these families to be a little more invested in what BYU's got going for their son or daughter. So there's a lot going good for BYU on the recruiting front right now. And as our good friend Casey Lundquist points out in Cougs Daily, BYU has tried to really up their game when it comes to the recruiting front. And I think this bodes well for BYU going into the Big 12. They're not going to be content to rest on their laurels and say, you know what, we built this program like this. Let's keep doing that. Will they continue to take guys who may be quote unquote projects and try and develop them? If they feel like they have a guy who can become a Power 5 caliber player, they absolutely will take that gamble. They have proven time and time again that they can take guys who are 2- and 3-star talents and then turn them into 4- or 5-star talents when they're finished at BYU. That is a very real thing that BYU has proven. But we also do know that while the star system is not perfect, it's getting better and better all the time. The more 4- and 5-star talent you can get into your program, it directly correlates along with investment in the program in terms of the overall success and longevity of a program winning at a high level. So if you can balance the two, bringing in some projects, obviously, taking gambles on certain guys, but at the same time, bringing in that top tier talent and allowing it to flourish in Provo, that's a recipe for success. And I think BYU realizes that, and they've pivoted a little bit here, and it's a very good sign for BYU. So get ready, folks. You're going to see more and more of the BYU is in a recruiting battle down to the bitter end. There is no longer are the days of BYU signing their 25-man recruiting class, and nary one of them seemingly has a Power 5 offer, and all of them have committed seemingly before their senior seasons have begun. These are going to be some of these races, like a Walker Lions. It would not surprise me to see this kid bypass that early signing period in mid-December and decide to wait all the way till February. And the funny thing about this is BYU will probably be in it the entire way. You could see some of those national signing day ceremonies where a BYU hat is up on that table or however they're going to announce it. BYU is going to be in the mix for more and more of these. And I, for one, cannot wait. The more you get this type of recruiting buzz going on, it's going to be more and more young men say, okay, why is this guy interested in BYU? Maybe I need to take a little closer look at what the Cougars have got going on. It can't hurt. And that is what I am excited about. If speaking just from the BYU sense of things, I'm excited to see BYU continuing to compete at a national level and up their game recruiting wise. It's a positive sign right now for BYU. Will they win all these recruiting battles? No, they will not. But the more you go out there and throw your hat into the ring, you can only win it if you have given those young men an option to come to BYU. We'll continue to talk about this, but I think it was a really cool article that Casey put together. And like I said, I'll link it in the show notes if you want to read it more in its entirety. But it shows that BYU, they have pivoted away from what kind of built this program, the backbone of this program under Kalani Sitake over the past 6 years. Now they're pivoting and saying, you know what? We've got a lot going for us now. This is the time to strike, to use the quote, to strike while the iron's hot. Strike while the iron is hot. Excuse the gaffe there. That is what I think you need to be excited for as a BYU fan. All right, coming up here right around the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about BYU women's soccer. We found out their fall schedule. Crazily enough, it's under what? It's not under 2 months. It's just about 2 months away when they will kick off their season. We'll also get to another one of our top 50 players in our top 50 player countdown, a former BYU tackling machine we're going to talk about. We'll get to all of that here in just a moment. First, though, a word on our friends over at Built Bar. Built Bars are the best tasting protein bars in the entire world. I am very fond of saying that, but if you love a chewy, chocolatey brownie, sounds pretty good to me. What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? That sounds even better. What if I told you can have all that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness with that caramel on top and pack it all with 17 grams of protein? That's what Built Bar's got with their caramel brownie Built Bar. They are available right now at Built.com. You got to act fast because they are a fan favorite and they will sell out. Forget about dessert. They are better than dessert. Plus, the macros are absolutely unreal. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, as we mentioned, and just 4 grams of sugar. I would replace a regular brand with Built's caramel brownie in a heartbeat. And the best part is they're covered in 100% real chocolate. For real, I've had many a Built Bar. Any of you who know me know that I am a big fan of Built Bars. The best part is you don't have to sacrifice tasty for healthy with our friends at Built Bar. You really can have both. They're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides a ton of health benefits. And the best part is there's a million different reasons you should try Built Bars. But for now, let's just say that caramel brownie will rock your world. It's not an understatement. Give it a shot, my friends. With Built, tasty is the new healthy. Go to Built.com right now to get your box of caramel brownie bars now. Built.com right now. And while you're there, use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. Once again, it's the promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com. Save yourself 15% and enjoy the best tasting protein bars with our friends at Built Bar. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Always appreciate your guys' patronage and help us out here. Want to encourage you guys. We've got an important favor to ask all of you. We have put together a survey so we can learn more about you, our listeners, on the Locked On Podcast Network and make your favorite Locked On podcast, like this one, even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Get to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It will not take very long, and everyone that completes that survey qualifies for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. Once again, to take the audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you in advance for your help, and thank you for helping us make the future of Locked On Cougars and the Locked On Podcast Network by extension even brighter. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk about our top 50 player countdown. And today we go to one of the great linebackers I don't think gets talked about enough, and that is Shad Hansen, the 6'1", 230-pound athlete from Danville, California, played at Monte Vista High School. And funnily enough, he came to BYU having spent time at the Air Force Academy prep program. Many of you know that Air Force, their academy actually has a prep program, which is essentially next door to the Air Force Academy that a lot of guys go to get their grades in order, get themselves ready to take on life as a cadet at the Air Force Academy. Well, Shad went to the Air Force Academy, and somehow BYU got in the mix for him, and BYU is lucky they did. From 1989 to 1992, he played essentially the same years as Ty Detmer, albeit played 1 year, I believe, beyond Detmer's senior season. But for his career, an absolutely insane number of tackles for Shad Hansen. 407 total tackles. He has a single season record for BYU set in 1991 with 193 tackles. 63 of those tackles that year were solo, 130 of them assisted. He had also had 5 sacks that year. For his career, had 9 total sacks, 11 tackles for loss. And tackles for loss during this era, versus what different eras of tackles for loss, I think there were probably more tackles for loss in there for him, just the way that things were scored. 11 tackles for loss to go with 9 sacks. That seems like a very, very high number, but nonetheless, also added 6 pass breakups, 6 forced fumbles, and also had 16 quarterback hits in his career. Like I said, Shad Hansen, single season tackle record from 1991. Funnily enough, Rocky Beagle is number 2 on this list. What does he have in a single season? 192 total tackles. So they're separated by 1 tackle. That's crazy. But Shad Hansen is a dude who is just absolutely a monster out there for BYU. Crazy thing about this is when you, for your career across 4 years playing for BYU, averaged 100 tackles per season, that's an incredible number. But Shad Hansen, a very easy addition here for the BYU top 50 player countdown here on Locked On Cougars. And we're having a lot of fun with this. What we've been doing is going back and forth between the top 50 players of the independent era over the past 10 or so years, along with the top 50 players outside of that. And I feel like Shad Hansen, he doesn't get talked about in the same vein as a Shea Muirbrook, even like a Marv Allen going way back when. You can go back through some of the great linebackers in BYU history. We talked yesterday on our show about Brandon Ogletree, who was one of the early guys in the independent era, but also spanned the final years of the Mountain West era. He's thought of very highly, but Shad Hansen, at least in my experience, does not get talked about in that same vein. I think he should be, because I think he's an absolutely incredible player, and I was very happy to add Shad Hansen to the list. We'll continue on with that countdown every single day throughout the summer, getting ready for the upcoming BYU football season. It's crazy to think it's only 88 days away, but it's coming fast, folks, so get ready. It is fast approaching, but I cannot wait to have BYU and USF kicking things off. It seems so far away still, but it's coming fast and furious, and I could not be more excited. All right, one final note before we go on today's show is we learned over the weekend that BYU women's soccer has a very stout schedule once again going in to, I believe it will be Jennifer Rockwood's, man, how many seasons she coached now? She's 26, 27? I don't remember how many she's coached, but she made the run to the national championship game a year ago with BYU and just fell agonizingly close, agonizingly short of winning the program's first ever national title. That's a retool a little bit, but they start the season with a bang. They will be starting their season Saturday, August 6th when they host their blue and white game. It's an intra-squad scrimmage. The following Wednesday, they'll have their alumni game where some of the players that have been on the team in recent years will come back and play the current team. But then the season begins in earnest on Saturday, August 13th, as BYU opens their season with 3 huge matchups to start their season. First, they'll be at North Carolina, one of the toughest teams annually. They are an annual Final Four team, it feels like, speaking of the Tar Heels. Then they're at Cal State Fullerton, who is no slouch in their own right in Southern California. That'll be the following week on Friday, August 26th. And then they make a quick trip the following week to Ohio State. BYU will spend the first 3 weeks of their season on the road. That's actually not a bad way to go about things because it can be plenty warm here along the Wasatch Front that time of year, but at the same time, you're going to North Carolina, Fullerton, and Ohio State. Guess what? Talk about humidity. So there is some advantages and disadvantages to it, but the home slate is what I'm most excited for. BYU's home opener will be against Colorado. Then Alabama comes to town. BYU made the trip to play the Crimson Tide last year. They will actually play 5 straight home matches after that 3-game road stretch to start the season. Cal State Northridge also comes in. Arkansas comes in, and then UVU, and then they'll get in their in-state play when they take on Utah State and Utah following that before opening West Coast Conference play, their final run in the West Coast Conference. So BYU, I think, is set up to have a very good season on the women's soccer front. Obviously, when you come off a national runner-up finish, you are going to be wondering, okay, what are the chances BYU can make another run like that? Man, you have Santa Clara there, who has been one of the toughest teams. They have won a national title, just 2 years ago in the West Coast Conference you'll have to face off against. But the good news is BYU, I think, conquered some demons last year, obviously making that run to the College Cup, the Final Four in women's soccer, obviously making it to the national championship match. So some great things are happening for Jennifer Rockwood and the Cougars. I cannot wait to see them back on the field. And they're just 2 months away from yesterday? So August 6th, they're 2 months away from starting their season with their scrimmages, and obviously just over 2 months away from their season opener out there at North Carolina. So some fantastic things happening for the women's soccer program. They do return 16 players this season, including 2021 United Soccer Coaches All-West Region players, Leveni Vaca and Jamie Shepard. So this is not a program that has got a bare cupboard by any means. They didn't necessarily go to the national championship and have everybody leave. You lose players like Michaela Coulihan. That's going to make life tough for you. Obviously, Michaela Clough, now she's married to former BYU baseball standout Jackson Clough, but she obviously is going to leave a hole in BYU's lineup. The good news is there are still 16 players coming in. They have 8 new players on its roster, including 7 freshmen. So there are some big opportunities for some young players to step in right away, but also a lot of returning experience for Jennifer Rockwood as well. So some good things for BYU, and I cannot wait to see the Cougars on the field, and we'll obviously be rooting them on in just over 2 months' time. All right, that is going to do it. It's a little bit of an abbreviated edition of the show today. My apologies for that. Have some other pressing matters I need to take care of, but we'll be back tomorrow. An interesting note on the BYU football front when it comes to what's going on with the quarterback position we needed to get into. We'll talk about that. We'll also, and what I mean by that is an interesting dynamic that has emerged that I had missed. If this was reported on, I think all of us missed it in the media, and we'll talk about that. It involves Jacob Conover, who looks like he's the presumed backup to Jaron Hall. Were his performances during the 2021 campaign, were they overshadowed by something that we may have missed and a former quarterback probably should have lent some insight into that maybe doesn't necessarily register right away? We'll talk about that on tomorrow's edition of the show. We'll also talk about BYU women's volleyball. We also learned about their schedule for the upcoming fall slate, another team that has high aspirations in their final run upcoming in the West Coast Conference. Got all that more ahead on tomorrow's edition of the show. So a huge thank you once again for making us your first listen of the day. Want to encourage you now to go make your second listen. Our friends over at the Locked On Big 12 podcast, Josh Neighbors does an incredible job making sure you guys are up to speed on everything you need to know about BYU's new conference home. I am a part of their their weekly roundtable they do. We'll actually be recording that on Tuesday night, so you'll probably expect that probably Wednesday or Thursday this week. So stay tuned for all of that. Get that free and available wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube, just like this show. Until tomorrow, have a great rest of your day. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast for June. I thought I was going to say July. I tried to say January all at the same time, but it is June 7th, 2022. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.